Fighting isn't heroic. It's not meant to be exhilarating. Violence should only bring despair. It's dark and terrifying, and it must remain gruesome. These are the haunting words of Izuru Kira as he describes the philosophy of the third division. Izuru believes that his Zanpakuto Wabisuke, or the Wretched One, is perhaps the truest realization of that grisly creed. A weapon that forces its enemies to bow their heads in penitence, begging for forgiveness for past deeds, only to have their life cruelly, swiftly, snatched away from them thanks to the Zanpakuto's unique blade. But how far do both Izuru and Wabisuke slip into the darkness? To what depths do those beliefs permeate Izuru's soul, and how does it manifest in his Zanpakuto's final stage? For our next Bankai theory crafting video, we're taking a look at one of the most highly requested characters for this series, Izuru Kira, the vice captain of the 3rd Division, and a character Kubo once teased as having a Bankai that would be nauseating to imagine. Well, nauseating or not, we're going to do our best to come up with some ideas for this grim weapon and its ultimate form. Izuru is a fascinating character, and one that hasn't been looked at too closely on the channel previously, but his sinister, macabre nature and harrowing Zanpakuto feel like just the right fit for the month of October. Izuru is a bleak, mirthless character, his outlook drowned in darkness thanks to the manipulation and betrayal of his former captain Gin Ichimaru, an act that has shaped the vice-captain ever since. But that gloomy nature of his has always existed somewhere deep within, even if he seemed much happier during his days in the Shino Academy, as his soul responded to it with the creation of his Shikai as we know it, Wabisuke. Thanks to its prominent, grisly theming, Wabisuke was a lot of fun to craft some Bankai ideas for. Not only is it very dramatic and even theatrical to some degree, but the imagery involved is evocative and dark, and very unique. So let's take a look at Izuru Kira's Zanpakuto Wabisuke and some possible ideas for its Bankai. Before we get started on the video, guys, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure to do that now for more Bleach content like this every single week. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up when you're done with it as well to help support me and the channel. And if you want to take that support from me another step further, I do have a Patreon as well. And as always, I want to say an enormous thank you and give a huge shout out to everyone who is supporting me over there on Patreon. I really do appreciate each and every one of you so very much. So thank you for your continued support. And yes, there will actually be some spoilers for the 1000-Year Blood War arc of Bleach in the video to come. With the release command raise your head or show yourself in some translations, Wabisuke transforms into one of the most unique looking blades in Bleach. Where a normal katana would come to a tip at the end, Wabisuke instead angles sharply to form a hook, bending to almost completely take the shape of a square. Despite being wielded by a vice captain, Wabisuke might be one of the most powerful and dangerous Shikai in the entire series. It only has the one ability, but as I've said before, Zanpakuto with only one power are often some of the most potent in the entire series, and that is true here as well. When something is struck by Wabisuke's strange blade, the target's weight doubles immediately. But it doesn't stop there. Every successive hit by Wabisuke continues to double the weight. So, in a battle scenario, if an opponent locks blades with Wabisuke 3 times unknowing of its power, the weight of their own sword will be doubled 3 consecutive times, with each additional doubling of the weight stacking on top of the last, until the opponent can no longer lift their blade, or anything else that's struck at all. When Izuru uses Wabisuke against Avirama, really the only time we get to see it used to its full potential, it is terrifying to behold. Simply by getting in close, Izuru is able to cut Avirama's wings 4 times in quick succession, making it impossible for Avirama to move at all as his wing buries itself into the ground due to its now immense weight. The fact that all it takes is a single successful hit to activate is absolutely crazy, and brings back memories of other, similarly if not more so broken powers with equally as easy to activate rituals such as Book of the End, for example, which also only needs a single hit. These kind of powers tend to be the most insane in Bleach. In fact, Wabisuke is a blade I've come to appreciate a lot more as I've got older, and really understood just how incredible a power it actually wields. Really, its only weakness is how stunted its range is, meaning Izuru needs to close the gap himself to secure the win. Unfortunately for Izuru though, he doesn't get to show it off much. His first battle in the series is against Rangiku, which is actually the last character we crafted some Bankai theories for, and she's possibly the worst possible matchup he could have ever had, as Rangiku Shikai transforms her blade into ash, removing Wabisuke's effectiveness completely. Much later, in the Thousand-Year Blood War arc, a resurrected Izuru uses Wabisuke to cut down several of the Lille flamingos in the Seirete, and we see their heads crash to the ground, buckling under the weight. But really, it's not a great example of Wabisuke's special ability helping Izuru to win the day there, as presumably he could have cut them down regardless. Wabisuke is actually used in a very cool and creative fashion in the Hell chapter, as Izuru cuts his own foot several times to massively increase its weight, allowing him to crush a Hell Hollow underfoot with ease. But all this talk of increasing weight is only half the picture, for when Izuru's enemies find themselves bowing low on the floor, is the true purpose of Wabisuke's unusually shaped blade revealed. As an enemy begs for forgiveness, Wabisuke's angular blade fits snugly around their neck, allowing Izuru to decapitate them in one fell swoop, executing them in the name of pure dark despair. Like I said, this was a Zanpakuto that I didn't fully appreciate when I was younger. It's not particularly flashy, it's not overly versatile, but actually the theme here is fantastic, and it lends itself well to some awesome Bankai ideas. So let's see how nauseating we can get, and what that actually might mean for Izuru's Bankai itself. First of all, one thing I love about a Bankai is when it brings with it some sweeping visual changes to the world around it, a sense of power in the atmosphere, letting you know that the Bankai is taking effect. For example, Yamamoto's Bankai drying out all of the moisture in the air, or Kyoraku's Bankai draping the world in darkness while giving everyone the chills. No matter what Bankai idea I discuss here, all of them come with these same area of effect visual changes, and they're actually fairly similar to Kyoraku's, as that Bankai evokes the similar sense of dread that I think would suit Wabisuke very well. So, no matter the idea, when Izuru activates Bankai, the sun is eclipsed overhead, dousing the battlefield in an eerie, soft, almost unnatural shadow. Izuru himself changes as well. He gains a hangman's hood over his head, only one eye left visible, reflecting Wabisuke's Zanpakuto spirit itself. In this form, Izuru also wears a tattered, frayed noose around his neck, and a ripped black mantle of Reiatsu over his shoulders. This design works particularly well with his new outfit as of the Hell chapter, where he's already wearing a hood, so as he activates Bankai, we could see it transform into the shadowy hangman's outfit. It's extraordinarily edgy, but I mean, that's kind of Izuru's whole deal. Moving on to the Bankai ideas themselves, and I've got 5 ideas here for you. But as always, let me know which is your favourite, and leave your own theories for Wabisuke's Bankai down in the comments too. As usual, the first idea is the one I think is probably the simplest and the least interesting overall, but still worth discussing. Upon activating Bankai, Izuru generates a constant field of immense gravity around himself, forcing anyone, friend or foe, in his nearby vicinity to their knees in penance, allowing him to casually take their heads with Wabisuke. The enemy doesn't immediately buckle under the gravitational pressure, or else I think that would be extremely broken. Instead, referencing Wabisuke's Shikai, for every few seconds they spend in the gravitational field, their own weight is doubled. This allows Izuru to use his Bankai against enemies that are stronger or have more Reiatsu than him. Depending on the amount of Reiatsu the person has, it will take them longer to buckle under their own weight. Now, this idea isn't overly nauseating, aside from the visual of a group of decapitated enemies surrounding Izuru by the time he's done, or the immense sickness the enemies feel as their bodies effectively collapse in on themselves as they sink downwards. That being said, I think the visual of Hangman Izuru beneath the ghastly eclipse, surrounded by kneeling bodies, is pretty awesome. One thing I like about this Bankai is that it feels like a natural extension of the simple yet strong ability of his Shikai, plus it removes some of the range issues that Wabisuke suffers from. Yes, it's quite simple, but it's an expansion of his Shikai's power, and ultimately that's what a Bankai is at the end of the day, so it makes sense to me. The second idea is a little more conceptual than the first. Where Wabisuke's Shikai doubles physical weight, Wabisuke's Bankai would double emotional, mental weight instead. Upon activating his Bankai, Izuru's Zanpakuto doesn't exhibit any outward changes, save for the darkened sky, thanks to the eclipse and Izuru's different outfit. However, as he fights his enemy, they would notice that their blade isn't growing any heavier, yet slowly but surely as Izuru successfully connects hits, the enemy's heart grows heavier instead, metaphorically speaking. Their resolve begins to weaken. Izuru's Bankai burdens them with the weight of any of their past regrets, past worries, their decisions they've made in life, causing their minds to buckle beneath sheer, insurmountable regret and torment. The weight of their anguish takes a toll on them physically, causing the enemy to eventually collapse to the ground, begging for death. In some instances, Izuru's Bankai would end with the opponent ritualistically killing themselves as a sort of punishment for every misdeed they've ever done, every sin they've ever committed, every worry, every anxiety that they've built up over the years. This one is pretty dark, and therefore I think is quite fitting for Izuru, and I like the fact as well that kind of mental anguish, emotional turmoil is often described as being a weight on someone. It's a burden that they have to bear, a kind of an allegory for an actual physical toll that's being taken on their bodies. Therefore I think it does fit the idea of Wabisuke quite well. As for the third idea, this one expands on the similarities I've outlined with Kyoraku's Bankai, only this time with the dash of Hisagi's in there as well. When Izuru activates Bankai, this time an enormous ball and chain, much like the one carried by Wabisuke himself except considerably larger, appears in the sky immediately in front of the eclipse, chains connecting to both Izuru and his opponent. You can see the similarities to Hisagi's Bankai, they're quite overt. As the two of them, however, continue to clash, every successive hit from either Izuru or his enemy increases the weight of that iron ball, while linking another chain to whoever was struck. The chains themselves begin to sap both fighters of their resolve, making their movements slow and sluggish as they're gradually dragged down into the earth by the immense weight of the iron ball, eventually forcing them to crawl upon the ground itself until someone's resolve is completely spent, their body pinned to the floor by numerous chains. And by the way, as the ball's weight increases, thereby dragging the chains down, the chains tighten as well, and they begin slicing into the fighter's flesh. That sounds pretty nauseating to me. The fourth idea is perhaps the most theatrical, and I really do like it. Interestingly, this one can only be activated once Izuru's Shikai has already taken effect, forcing his opponent to bow before him in sorrow. You might be wondering, well, what's the point then? The opponent has already been defeated, and that's true. This Bankai idea is more of a final, definitive punishment that Izuru can bestow upon enemies he believes truly deserve it. As the executioner, the hangman, Izuru activates Bankai, his bested enemy quivering in fear as they kneel before him. From beneath the enemy rises a shadowy executioner's block, which their neck then rests upon. As Izuru reads a declaration of punishment, as he reads out a list of the crimes committed by his opponent, Wabisuke himself is summoned beside the condemned and beheads them with his own Shikai. The difference here, though, is that the victim is completely removed from the cycle of rebirth upon their death, plunging their soul into a limbo of shadow forevermore. It's pretty brutal and undeniably terrifying, which I think works well for Izuru. In my mind, it also perfectly embodies his words from the start of the video. For example, even though he decapitated Avirama, he still arguably gave him a warrior's death. Here, death is absolutely not glorious. It is a true, terrifying punishment, a fall into an all-consuming black hole. It's horrifying and cold, and definitively final. The fifth and final idea is perhaps the most abstract. I feel like the final spot in these videos is often reserved for the most conceptual ideas. But upon activating his Bankai, Izuru seals himself and his enemies in a black veil. From the onset, nothing changes immediately, nothing that you can notice anyway, except Wabisuke loses its ability to double the weight of whatever it touches. So now, although it retains its angular design, it's just an empty blade. However, as the two of them fight, the veil begins to shift and change and warp based on the enemy's actions, words, and thoughts that will be conveyed to Izuru every time he makes contact with Wabisuke. The more despicable this person is, the more villainous their history, the more an execution stand will be built for them. And this Bankai plays into the execution theme in general. Depending on the person, the method of their execution could vary. The veil may slowly construct a gallows, or forge an Iron Maiden, or set up a guillotine. Whatever it is, as long as Izuru can hold out long enough with his empty sword, if the execution is completed, the enemy will be instantly killed via that method. So those are my ideas for what Wabisuke's Bankai could be. Are they nauseating enough? Kubo's comment has always fascinated me with the depth of what it could really mean. Is it down to how grisly and gruesome Izuru's Bankai would be, or is it nauseating because of the trembling sickness one might feel under such crushing pressure? Maybe it's nauseating to imagine due to the existential crisis afflicted upon a victim. I've tried my best to capture that feeling with some of these, but as always, I'd love to hear your ideas down in the comments. Could we ever see Izuru's Bankai in the future? I absolutely love his new design in the Hell chapter. It's actually probably one of my favourite new designs in general, so I'm certainly hoping to see more from him. But that's it for the video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Of course, as always, let me know which of Izuru's Bankai ideas was your absolute favourite, and do let me know your own Bankai ideas down in the comments below as well. They're always an awful lot of fun to have a look at. But that's it from me. Again, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to hit subscribe if you haven't done already. Give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and until next time, I'll catch you later. And I'll see you then.